Got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf fans. This is the Preferred Lines podcast. My name is Joe Idoni. Exciting show on tap for you this week. We're going to go through the Rocket Classic, but before we do that, let's bring along a man who called him for his one-and-done pick, who title pictured him in the article this week, shouted him out all week on the show. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. John Haslbauer, good evening. Great hit, my man.
Thank you. Finally a victorious Monday for the pod, for the show. Didn't look like it was Keegan all the way. Really, never felt good about that one. But you know what? He gave himself a chance going into Sunday when you have to chase Tommy Fleetwood. 3-shot deficit never really feels too far out of reach. And when there was really only 3 guys who could win that one, and it's Keegan, Russ, and Tommy, you knew that really anything could happen. So we'll take it. We're on the board. I'm happy about it.
Congratulations. There's one guy out of those 3 with a little extra dog on him. We'll talk more about it in a second. But first, as always, thank you for joining the program this evening. It is an honor to bring this show to you each and every Monday, presented by the good folks over at Rotoballer PGA. Promo code there, lines, that will get you 10% off any sub. Still a remaining 4 weeks until we get to the Open Championship. We lead into Ryder Cup. We lead into Tour Championship. Exciting rest of the season, rest of the summer on tap. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks as always to them for being the presenting sponsor of this show each and every week. John, let's get back to Keegan Bradley. There's something about the Northeast and Keegan and this tournament that always seems to give us these dramatic electric finishes. You know, TPC River Highlands, it's funny because we've talked and we've spent a lot of time in recent weeks on remembering aspects of the course, whether it was Muirfield Village, whether it was trying to learn Philly Cricket Club, whether it was the ins and outs and the history of Oakmont. TPC River Highlands, there's nothing memorable about that course except for the actual memories that it creates. There's been so many big moments. This tournament has a way to just build and build momentum until the 72nd hole, and sometimes more than that. And what an electric birdie bogey swing that we saw to end that tournament. And Keegan Bradley was certainly pretty fired up. And now the floodgates are open on the talking points. We spoke about it a few weeks ago. I think I kind of had this in mind that this was going to happen. And now it seems like a foregone conclusion, right?
Keegan on as playing captain now.
Yes.
I had him on my, best 12 before this week. Obviously, I thought very highly of him going into the Travelers and felt like if he won this week, then, how do you keep him off? I think it's probably, Ben Griffin looked good again. I think taking a step backwards after that week is maybe Cam Young, maybe Brooks is somebody I felt very good about after the US Open. But as time goes on and we see less of him, you might see a Ben Griffin take his place and Keegan feel more appropriate. He is just hitting it on a line and 340 every time. And that's going to play at Bethpage. So, you can't really compare the Travelers Championship to a Ryder Cup atmosphere, but for Keegan, it's USA chance on every single hole. So it kind of is for him specifically the closest you can approximate to playing in front of a home crowd at Bethpage. And he rose to the occasion, which other players in his group could not say the same. And who would, I would love to see a Sunday singles of Keegan versus Tommy Fleetwood again. Just figure out how to match himself against those guys. Logistically, can Keegan be the captain and play? Tough, maybe you have an assistant captain step up and take a little bit more of the responsibilities. We'll see. But I mean, he absolutely deserves to be on the team. His job is to put the best 12 together. And he's definitely one of the best 12 right now.
Absolutely. I think he's one of the best 6 right now on the USA roster, and not only you mentioned it, how well he's driving it kinda on a string, he's hitting his wedges great. He has, I mean, just the 18th hole was kind of a microcosm of what he's been doing and the confidence that he shows, the clutch ability that he has, and what's really been the difference this season when you look at, like last 24, last 30 rounds on, like, whether it's bent or POA or these blends that they have in the Midwest and Northeast, I just looked at it because I was looking at it this week for the Rocket Classic. The number one putter in the field is Keegan Bradley. I mean, how many 40-foot bombs did he hole throughout the week? And everything was close, especially when you saw Russ with multiple 3 putts, seemingly lost on the greens on the back nine. Tommy Fleetwood, even the ones that he 2-putted were not easy. They weren't tap ins. Like the one on 17, he rolled 6 feet by, had to make a comebacker. So, nerves certainly plays a factor in that, and guys that just didn't seem to be themselves on the greens. But that's the atmosphere that the Ryder Cup's going to bring, and I think that he certainly deserves a spot. I don't think it doesn't look like he's going to completely give up that captaincy. He's not going to relinquish that, but certainly feels like he's destined to play and be a factor on one of these teams.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely deserved it. Even if he was having like, let's say he wasn't the captain and he was having like an average season like he had last year, just the Bethpage element of it, like the crowd is going to be so on his side, being a St. John's guy, playing, growing up on that course, knowing the course so well. I think he also gives a little bit of an advantage. We talked about this a little bit before. As captain, like, what Luke Donald did to weigh in on course setup.
Yeah.
He knows Bethpage so well, Keegan Bradley. So he's going to know the little idiosyncrasies and everything he needs to do to create a team that can have a competitive advantage there. And it seemed like at times the Europeans were actually the bombers now who had the advantage, but there's a lot of great total drivers on this USA team. So I don't know if that means keep it long and pinch the fairways more and have to hit it straight and long, and you have a little bit of an advantage there. But they're really starting to build up a full roster of distance guys now.
Do you buy into the narrative that it's going to be extremely difficult to manage being captain and playing to the point where it could work as a negative for Team USA rather than a positive?
No, I don't. I think being a Ryder Cup captain is being like a baseball manager. Like you're not really doing X's and O's in the middle of the game and making mid-game adjustments like you would in the NBA, where it's like, oh, okay, they're doing this. We got to regroup. We got to call a timeout and re-game plan this thing. It's just, okay, let's see who jives well. Who are my pairings? What order do they go out in? Say like a word to them walking from one tee to another to hype them up a little bit. It's such minor things that, like, if that's all you're missing, like a mid-round adjustment, you don't think you can have Kevin Kisner or Jim Furyk or somebody else take that responsibility over? Like, I don't think it's such a big deal. I think it's going a little bit overblown that it's not possible to be a player captain.
I agree with you, but here's what I'll say. I think that there's something to the additional pressure that it adds to him and the additional pressure that it adds to the rest of Team USA that I think is foreign. Like when he said in his post-round press conference that I think it was Seth Waugh or the PGA of America guy that called him and told him, like, we want you to be the first playing captain since Arnold Palmer. I don't know if I buy that. Not to say that he's not saying that. I think the PGA of America, who's been planning for this for 6 months, is quietly on board that, before this win, we just want Keegan to be captain and we want to pick our 12 best guys. And this is how we've planned for everything for the last year and 9 months, was for one guy to be the captain, to pick the team, to set up everything the way we normally do. And this certainly throws a wrench in some of the planning and some of the logistics behind the scenes with, 2.5 months to go that I think they probably weren't envisioning. Even if they said that to them, I think deep down they were probably thinking, you go be the captain. Let's find the 12 best guys and let's do everything we can to do what we didn't do in taking care of business over in Rome so that we can rectify that situation. Because it's crazy. These people work 2 years and they get to play for 3 days, right? I'm talking about the people behind the scenes that set up the course and are highly involved in the Ryder Cup. That was kind of my takeaway from that. I wanted to kind of shift gears now that we're past Keegan to Tommy. Man, you can't help but feel pretty heartbroken for him. I mean, I was rooting for you because of how much you had at stake with Keegan. I had Russell Henley, who was theoretically would have been in a playoff with Keegan had he not self-penalized himself. And even the PGA Tour came out apparently and said, we don't see it, Russ.
Yeah.
But he called it on himself. So it is what it is. But Tommy, from what happened on 16 to kind of bailing out right there, not being able to chipping it off the green, 17 hitting it in the bunker, hitting a great approach shot, nearly 3-putting that, and then the indecision on 18. It feels like these moments are continuing to build negative reinforcement for Tommy Fleetwood. Do you think this makes it worse for him? Do you think that he's able to take some positives from this? Is he going to win at some point in the next year?
Yes, he is going to win
on the PGA Tour
soon. Yes, I think he will. I tweeted this right after everything was over, but it's unfortunate that the 2 best chances he's had to win on the PGA Tour have been as the villain against Nick Taylor at the Canadian Open, where every single person in tens of thousands was willing him to lose. And exactly the same situation came again in New England for the Travelers for Keegan Bradley. Like, it's not nearly the same atmosphere if it's like Russ Henley v. Tommy Fleetwood down the stretch, just the 2 of them. Like, people, I think, then would shift to be pro Fleetwood in that situation because they understand the guy's been trying to win for so long. And New England's not exactly polling for Russell Henley. I know there's a lot of USA chants and everything going on in the world right now, a little extra American pride maybe. But it's not like a US Open. It's just another PGA Tour event. So I think we see a dramatic shift in crowd support for Tommy once we get overseas and we go to the Scottish Open and then we go, to the British Open right after that. I think he will welcome the support of everybody trying to literally will him to victory, because that, I feel like, is exactly why Keegan won this week. The vibes were just picking him up and literally willing him there. Like, he didn't have his best stuff for a lot of that round, but he found a way. And I think Tommy can do that. He obviously has won a ton overseas throughout his career, so we know he can do it. It's just this very obvious monkey on his back that gets bigger and bigger as he gets more in the spotlight. But it will come. And the last thing I'll say about Tommy too, we talked about, like, should we bet Tommy outright a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I was like, here's my problem with Tommy. When he needs, when there's one scoreable hole and he has to birdie it on the back 9 and it's a par 5, he doesn't birdie it. And he actually birdied both the par 5s yesterday. So I was like, okay, once he birdied the par 5 on the back 9, I was like, okay, this is a different Tommy. He almost put it in the drink, but he didn't. And he survived it. And
but he didn't get 15. The
but
short par 4.
Now it was 15. Now that's the one where it's like, okay, this is a gimme birdie. Just get your birdie and move on. And you've separated. And that's how it kind of became his downfall this time.
Here's one of the things I noticed. I think early on, watched pretty much the entire round yesterday. I don't think he had it. I just don't think he had his game. I don't think he was fully intact. I don't think he had his A game. I don't think Russ had it. They had their low rounds earlier in the week, and it felt like Keegan was still building to this point for the majority of the round. And I was kind of thinking about this, like, it's almost a gift and a curse. But these guys that we label gutless, that can't win, and that choke artists in these big situations, they're all, let me name a few: Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Shane Lowry. These guys that have this knack for, like, being there and not getting across the finish line. They all have very similar skill sets where they're highly accurate players. So I almost have this weird sense that, like, it works to their disadvantage, because even when they don't have their best stuff and they're in the lead, they're not, like, ejecting like other guys quickly. Like Justin Thomas, when he had the lead, is like a driver hook into the woods on the 3rd hole, and he's just gone, and you don't think of him anymore. And then he's not, like, there to choke it away at the end. these guys don't really make big numbers. It's rare for them to bogey. So they just linger around with their like B minus C plus game enough to get to the final 3 holes, where then it feels like they ultimately just choke it away in the end when the nerves build up. So it was kind of weird that I feel like a lot of the guys who have struggled to get across that finish line all share a similar skill set. Have you thought about that before or noticed that at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of it is like they play so well because they have their fairway finder, and then you get to Sunday pressure, and it's all of a sudden it feels tighter, and you're just trying to not make mistakes, and you're playing tighter, and you're not playing your loose self, and that's what we saw with Tommy. He didn't miss a fairway on Saturday, took a commanding lead, and then couldn't find the fairway for most of the front 9. So if you rely on your accuracy, that is something that I think under a microscope in the final rounds does get kind of exploited. But yeah, I mean, that's why I keep betting Colin a lot. He's somebody who's won a lot early on, so I'm not concerned about his inability to close. But he is somebody who will not hit the putt he needs to hit to separate and continue to give him 10 footers and not sink them. And it's like, okay, eventually he has to hit these because he's won 2 majors. Like, we know you're capable of it. But yeah, it's interesting.
All right, let's do a quick credit check on the Travelers, then we'll shift gears to Detroit for this week. I'm going to give it, maybe somewhat surprisingly, I'm going to actually dish some credit here to Tommy Fleetwood on a day where I think everyone's kind of shitting on him. And here's why. Just a class act, man. Like, he's a true role model in a sense that stood there after complete disastrous heartbreak, hat off. Keegan is celebrating, chest bumping, dropping F-bombs, look him in the eye, shake his hand. Great round, Keegan. Go over, hug his wife and kids, meet with the media for a full segment, which I think is like all of a sudden noteworthy at this point that he was willing to talk to the media, but took it on the chin, said how much it hurts, moved on, tried to draw some positives from it, and just think about how good he played the week on a whole. And I just give him credit for being a true stand-up human being and facing adversity like a man. So shout out, give a little credit to Tommy Fleetwood. Who do you got this week?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's actually ironic that I'm going to pick Rory, who would not do the same that Tommy did and handle himself and field the questions and put himself out there. But Rory is someone who just okay, won the Masters and he hasn't cared since. And we saw the flashes of him again. I'm not really going to give him credit for it because he should always play that way. But I will acknowledge that Rory is kind of a little bit back. And the next time he plays again, I don't think he has to answer all the questions of hey, what happened? We know that he is capable of playing like himself now. So I don't know when he'll play again. It might be the Scottish. I'd have to imagine he's going to take the next couple weeks off. He's been playing a lot this year, really. So I think he's going to be pretty live over those next 2 events. And he could have easily gone through the motions here. I know it's a signature event and there's a lot of money at stake, and it's easy for me to say that. But he looked good again, and that kind of goes under the radar because he played himself out of the tournament and then had a great final round.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good stuff. Rory and Tommy get a little bit of credit. Keegan gets the ultimate credit. Congrats to the Northeast. Congrats to Captain Keegan Bradley. Amazing week of the Travelers Championship. Let's talk Detroit, John. I'm going to lean on you for a lot of the course preview stuff. I know your article was out yesterday, hitting a winner. You're already publishing pieces. Terrific work by you. But of course, Detroit Golf Club, 1916, turn of the century, Donald Ross design. What I have is pretty tree lined, although it's not overly penal. It is not a place that is really strict on missed fairway penalty, which I think makes it a little bit different than some of the places we've seen recently, like Colonial, like Oakmont, like Muirfield Village, these places that are extremely strict, where if you miss the fairway, you are in big trouble. You can kind of get away with it here more than normal. I think driving distance is of added benefit because of that. small green surfaces. Really, they started as, and I know they're going to undergo a pretty substantial renovation, I think, immediately after this tournament next year, or excuse me, after the tournament this year. But the greens have just over time gotten smaller and smaller from buildup. They're now just over 5,100 square feet on average. Of course, the bent grass Poana combination. In the past, I looked at some quotes from previous winners, including Ricky Fowler, who mentioned that they play a lot like Poana, really bumpy, and I think they're just overdue for a little bit of a renovation here. Fairways not overly wide, but also not extremely narrow to the point where you have to hit them. You can kind of get away with a miss, and the tree line Parkland's nature of it makes it a little bit random in that sense. On the scorecard, par 72, so you do have the full complement of 4 par 5s, just short of 7,400 yards, excuse me. Those are kind of my basic notes. What are some unique skill sets you're looking for this week, or anything to add on Detroit Golf Club?
Yeah, I'm surprised it was at 18 under was enough to win it here, because it's a par 72, not a ton of length, not very penal if you miss the fairway. If you have a significant miss, you're in trouble. But if you're just a good off the tee player, whether you gain with extreme distance or extreme accuracy, that's actually proven either end of that spectrum works very well here. So you just don't want to be average in the middle, either hit it super far past these hazards or play out of the fairway every hole. Either way is fine. Approach play is the separator here. You don't need a ton of distance. We've seen like Kevin Kisner and Adam Hadwin repeatedly play well here, just as much as we've seen Bryson and Tony Finau who've taken the bomb approach. So there's a couple different ways you can get it done here. Even last year's leaderboard was like Aaron Ryan, Min Woo, T2, two very almost entirely different styles of play that can get it done here. And Cam Davis, just for whatever reason, this is his course. I can't really explain it.
Shot maker, man. Cam Davis.
Well, he's somebody who has he has length, but he doesn't always use it. And he actually plays more of his good results come in the shorter courses, where he can play less than driver, and you can take that approach here. So there's something about, something fitting his eye or being able to hit to his numbers here that's worked well for Cam Davis. But another thing that's interesting is course history, not very predictive here. Most of the guys who win coming off of a miscut the year before at this event or in thetheir debut. A lot of the best players here have only played this course once and finished T2 when they did. Like I saw Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, Min-Woo Lee, Cam Young finished T2 in his debut here. So like everybody, the guys who are here and you're like, why did they schedule around this? It's been such a busy summer and now they're in Detroit too. It's like, oh, because they think they can win here. And they put on a great event. It's like, it's in the heart of Detroit. It's a big city. They take care of the players very well. Everybody speaks very highly of how they get taken care of here. So it's a great event. It's very good for the community. I'm glad they have it there. The course itself, not my favorite, but as you said, they're about to do a much overdue renovation, which will be awesome because it's a very, very old course. You can go a lot of different routes when you put a player pool together this week. So I'm excited to break down the board with you because this is one where I like so many guys and I'm trying to whittle it down. I'm just trying to take a stance one way or another. And I haven't put my bets in, but I'm definitely leaning towards a couple things and we'll talk through, and hopefully you can help me decide where I land this week.
Hopefully you can help me decide as well. Before we get to that, let's talk a little bet spurts. Promo code LIONS to get 25% off any sub for the best stat modeling resource there is on the interwebs. If you want to look at John's model, I'm going to bring it up right now, so you are in luck. But if not, and you want to check it out later, you can view the expert models along with everyone else. It is a fantastic resource this week. John, why don't you walk me? I'm going to read your top 10. Walk me through some of the more important stat categories that you're kind of looking at this week. Cantlay, Morikawa, Clanton, 1, 2, 3. Then we go Keegan, Keith Mitchell, Ben Griffin, Alex Smalley, Griot, Noren, Harry Hall rounds out your top 10. What are some of the things that you have put the most eggs into which baskets this week from a stat perspective?
Yeah, It's comp course history. I think there's a lot of correlation. Like it's interesting because the course itself, not so much, but the comp courses, I'm looking at the other Donald Ross courses like Sedgefield, Eastlake. And then you obviously got TBC Twin Cities, which is proven to be one of the bigger correlated ones. We know Tony Finau did the whole swing at both events. A lot of guys, super, super high correlation between those two courses. Play at the same time of year. They're both very new courses that people are just seeing for the first time over the last 6 years, and both place a very high premium on just ball striking. Again, whether you're long or you're just super accurate, just being able to be elite in one of those two things, either distance or driving accuracy, goes a long way here. The biggest difference between this course, Detroit Golf Club, and TBC Twin Cities is I have found that putting skill is extremely important on just any Donald Ross course, but that is true here as well. One of the biggest defenses of Detroit Golf Club is the greens. It's always the case with Donald Ross. Exactly the opposite at TBC Twin Cities. That is a place where Tony Finau can win, being the worst putter coming in. Cam Champ can win, same thing. Lee Hodges can. All of the worst putters find it. They all just find it because they're very simple greens. It's just a
Johnny Vegas.
Yes, literally. That
goes on and on. I like your comp courses here. That's where you have a good bit of the weight. I mean, I think that I think of the really low hanging like Birdie Fest TPC courses like TPC Deer Run, Twin Cities. I think Craig Ranch has seen some different crossover in terms of correlation, even though it's kind of different agronomy wise. But yeah, you have some really good comp courses there on the list in terms of like who rates out the best on those comps. Cantlay, Morikawa, Finau, Tom Kim, Keith Mitchell, who Joanne mentioned earlier, Noren, Cam Davis, Keegan Bradley. There he is. Thank you for walking us through that, John. Anyone is interested in the rabbit hole at all, reach out to John or I anytime. Make sure to use that promo code LINES. We would greatly appreciate it. And now, without further ado, it's time. It's what you've all been waiting for. Let's make some bets. All right, Rocket Classic. Now we're dropping the mortgage. Here are the top 6 on the odds board for this week. We'll start with Colin Morikawa, your favorite to win at 12-1. Patty Cantlay right behind him at 16-1. Travelers Championship winner and Captain America Keegan Bradley 18-1. Then you get Ben Griffin 22-1. Cam Young 30-1. Threw Luke Clanton in there at 33-1. Those are the top 6, John. Give me a take or two on some of these guys, and where's your head kind of at the top of the board?
Really interesting top of the board. I just have a lot of thoughts on all these guys. Very short number for Colin. Not interested. Could he win? Certainly. Lost in a playoff here to Fowler alongside Adam Hadwin 2 years ago.
Yep.
Not interested. Just not interested. 16 on Cantlay. Don't love. I've seen an 18. That's okay. I've thought about it, but it's been so long since Patrick Cantlay won. 2022 BMW Championship. It's been that long since Patrick Cantlay won. Obviously, he could do well here, but you have to think the Cantlay win comes on an actual like strategist, think your way through the course type of setup. But I know he's played well in Birdie Fest too, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if he won. I'm not paying the 16 on him. Keegan, if he didn't win and have his number like slice in half, I probably would have bet him at like 25-1.
Correct.
But now that he's 18, coming off a big win, not interested. So that led me to Ben Griffin. Ben Griffin sneaky, like was top 5 in driving distance at Oakmont. Ridiculous. I didn't really see 6'1". I thought he was like a 5'8" guy. He's 6'1". He's actually like a fairly tall dude. So now he has speed. Now he has distance. You can take the bomb and gouge approach here. He's done very well at the comp courses. I think he was like top 12 in the comp courses. A guy who has his PGA Tour card before this distance gain because of everything that he was able to do with his short game. His short game is elite. And we've seen Ben Griffin do his best work in easy scoring conditions in the fall swing with those like wedge fests. And the more he adds distance, the more most courses become a wedge fest for him. So I think it's a really good setup for him. This will be a really interesting prove it kind of week of like, okay, now there's actually expectations for you to be one of the guys to beat here. I don't think that's really been the case for Ben Griffin since his comeuppance over the last month or two. So let's see how he handles himself, because if Keegan's really solidified a place in that top 12, Ben Griffin is either like number 12 or 13 on most guys' lists. So still a lot to prove for him. Cam Young, scared of it. I don't know what to do here. I can't miss out on the Cam Young thing. Everybody's on board with Cam Young. 2 top 6 finishes here in his first 2 appearances. Playing great golf. Makes a lot of sense. I might end up there. And Luke Clinton, a little short for me. Not looking unbeatable like he kind of had this time last year. He came on as an AM, looked good, looked a little bit more human, missed the cut at the Canadian Open last week. So I think it's a little short for me on Clinton with so few starts under his belt.
Agree with you there. Okay, so let me give you my Aussie golfer thinks none of these guys can win. I think I like the chances of 3 of them more than 3 others. Here are my 3 no's: Clanton, Bradley, Morikawa. For many of the reasons you mentioned, I think Colin's too short. I think Clanton's too short. I just don't think, after what an emotional victory that was for Keegan Bradley and the additional questioning of the doors that he's opened up for media microphones to be shoved into over the next couple of days, would be extremely difficult to repeat in those type of circumstances, given what he told us about how much it means to him to play in the Northeast and Cromwell. So let's talk about the other guys. Cantlay. I think he's the best player in the field. Number 1 in my power rankings model this week, ahead of Collin Morikawa. Number 1 in the field on comp courses that you had and I had, even though we had different comp courses. Number 1 in the field on tree-lined golf courses with bent POA greens, aka just Midwest golf. Given how many birdies that I think is going to be required for you to make to win the Rocket Classic, that's why I like him better than Collin Morikawa, because he's a much better putter. And he's become a guy, and you mentioned, like, I have this preconceived notion too of him being an absolute grinder, and like you kind of want his tactical thinking man's skill set on a more difficult course. But from a data driven approach, the scoring conditions being really easy are his best chance to win. Number 1 in birdie or better percentage on easy scoring conditions since 2024 in the field. He's been a lot of ups and downs, but he's not playing well, it seems, on the really difficult courses. And you get him on a course where 20 under par wins. And I think this could be a spot where he kind of breaks through. You said he hasn't won in 3 years. Are you forgetting the Atlanta Drive Championship? We can't knock him for that. He was huge. Benny G, here's the thing. When I did the power rankings, I thought it would be too, like, off the world to put him number 1, but I can see an argument where he's the number 1 player in the field, especially with how he's been playing lately. The last 4 events have been phenomenal for Ben Griffin. Here's the only negative, right? And you mentioned how, like, his strength is his around the green game, chipping. He's phenomenal. I don't really think that matters here. They are small greens, but if you're having to scramble a lot, you're just not going to win. The courses, he's picked up added distance, but he's really been dominant off the tee on courses with a high penalty for a missed fairway. Colonial, where he won, you can't miss a lot of fairways at Colonial. He does not. Memorial, you can't miss a lot of fairways at Memorial. Played well there. Oakmont played well there. Quail Hollow played well there. These are places you can't get away with missing a ton of fairways. Now, on events where you can gain strokes off the tee despite not hitting the fairway, he has not played nearly as well. Like the Travelers last week. I mean, I think Wyndham Clark was leading in strokes gained off the tee at one point, and he had hit like 40% of fairways. Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch, he did not play well because you can get away with anything off the tee there. You don't have to hit the fairway. The Truist, even, it seemed like people didn't really care about hitting the fairways. It was bomb and gouge. That's where you were gaining strokes off the tee. These are some of the events where he hasn't finished as well, and I think that I would put Detroit Golf Club more in that batch. So that's the only negative on Ben Griffin. And then Cameron Young, I bet. 30 to 1. I feel like he's going to be so overpopular that it has zero chance of hitting. But you just put together the recent form and that he's clearly a course fit. His approach play inside of 150 yards has been vastly improved. I think it's where he's made the biggest stride that's kind of turned things around. We know he's one of the longest player on the field. Does when you take into account like the popularity, when you look at the tips checker and you see the pie chart and it's like this giant slice of Cam Young, does that skew your thinking in terms of is this a good bet or a bad bet, or are we just inside this like sphere dome of golf Twitter where we think it matters and really it has nothing to do with the outcome of the tour? Where do you fall there?
It's always a function of the number. If Cam Young was 20 to 1, he would not have a slice of the pie this week. The same way if Colin Morikawa was 30 to 1 this week, everybody would bet Colin Morikawa. So I think it's more the industry is sharp on, okay, this guy has good course history and good recent form, and there's not a lot of good options at the top of the board. That naturally leads me to Cam Young because I'm not afraid of there's just too much going in his favor. And when it's the case of Cam Young, he's never won before and he's had so many good odds opportunities. I keep buying low on him where it's like, yeah, like I'll sweat Cam Young at 70 to 1 this week.
Yep.
And he teases you. And then you're like, okay, I bet him like 5 times this week. I haven't lost that much money on him because he's been so bad. He's been like 100 to 1 every week. And it's like, okay, yeah, like every major preview we've had, I've been like, hey, you know, I'm probably going to bet this week Cam Young because he's 200 to 1. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm sort of invested. I've been betting him so much, and now it actually would make sense if he won this week, so I can't miss it. So there's a little bit of a FOMO to it. I don't usually bet off of FOMO, but with Cam Young, I might. And it's almost just by way of not loving much else at like that under, let's say 20 to 50 to 1 range. Like, you know, I'm just kind of drawing myself there too.
Yep. All right, let's take a look at the mid-range here, John. Hideki's 33 to 1. Harry Hall battling through some illness to another good finish at the Travelers, 33 to 1. Siwoo and Wyndham Clark at 35 to 1. At 40 to 1, you get Davis Thompson, Max Grazerman, Keith Mitchell, Akshay Bhatia, Tony Finau. In 45 to 1, you get another past champion of the Rocket Classic in Ricky Fowler. This little section of the board here, any particular player that you've kind of taken a liking to so far, John?
I was really thinking about Wyndham. I would not be surprised if Wyndham has a good week.
A lot of people on Wyndham, I think.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, he was in the mix last week at the Travelers. He finally looked good for the first time in a while. Now it's a good course fit. He had some decent history here, too. So I could see why people are getting there. I think that number is a little, it feels short to me with like how poor overall of a season he's been having.
Yes.
And that's ultimately what's kind of kept me off of him. But I think a DFS play for me will be Wyndham as long as he's not overly owned. That Harry Hall number is crazy to me. I mean, I know like short game is sort of important here, but he's not a ball striker. So not interested. Probably a target for matchups. If I can get Matsuyama against Harry Hall heads up, I am going to do that. For me, it was I'm leaning one way and I'm trying to narrow it down. It's between Keith Mitchell, who we mentioned before, Tony I'm leaning away from, and Ricky Fowler. Ricky's having a very solid year. And I think if you're trying to run back what happened with Keegan last week, where it's the Ryder Cup year, ride that form into a place that you've won before with a veteran that everybody in the home crowd is going to be rooting for whenever he's in the mix. That feels like Ricky Fowler. He's playing well. He's won here. I trust him to close a tournament more than I do Keith Mitchell. I feel like Keith Mitchell might have this like untapped ceiling that Fowler may not have, but I find myself, I haven't put this bet in, but I find myself leaning towards Fowler as the only guy I would bet on this page.
For me, I have no one in this range as of right now, but if you look at the field, When I just think upside, I'm just drawn to Hideki. I put him in the picture for a reason. I still think he's just an absolute flusher who can get hot and go nuclear at any given time. And he's very difficult to predict in that manner. But when he does, he's equally like one of the top 3 players in the field when he's in form. Gained 6.7 on approach at the US Open, another 2 last week at the Travelers. Putter's kind of hot right now. 4 out of the last 5, he's been net positive with the flat stick and just an upside play. I know that the driver and the off the tee, really the driving accuracy has just been killing him because he's not that long of a player anymore. So when he misses fairways on these courses with really deep, difficult, rough, he's at such a disadvantage. You can't get away with it at Oakmont. You can't get away with it at the at the Memorial, excuse me. Some of these courses, he's just been at such a disadvantage because he has not been accurate. I don't think that's as big of a factor here, and he may be able to get away with it a little bit. Thought about Killer Keith. Thought about I can't get to Wyndham, man. I see it. The T8 here, of course, in 2022, that was a big year when he was kind of coming up. He's putting so poorly right now inside of 15 feet. I have him 120th in the field. He's not in the top 100 in wedge play inside of 150 yards. And we're giving him like a lot of credit for the Travelers last week. It was a T17. Like Harry Hall is twice as good. And before that, it was a cut, a 59th, and a 56th. He's got the additional drama, the stuff from Oakmont still lingering. I don't think people are generally on his side right now. And it feels like a pretty steep price to lay when there's other guys there who I think hold a little bit of a better value position for me. There's some guys in this next range, though, that I really like. There's 45-1. We have Matt Fitzpatrick and Minwoo Lee. Jumping up into the 50s, Rasmus Højgaard, Chris Gotterup, Alex Smalley, Ryan Gerard, Thornbjorn Olesen, Taylor Moore, Alex Noren, Matt Wallace, Michael Kim, Kurt Kitayama. Griot is 70-1. Ben On, Steven Yeager, 70-1. Decent little crop of players here with some upside and a few career wins on the PGA Tour. Any spots of hope for you in this 45-70-1 range?
I gave Gotterup a long look here. I think when he came straight up out of the college ranks, he was like the community bet here. He was like basically the Luke Clinton that year where he was in like the 30 or 40 range. Yep. And he did okay. But this is the type of course that he should play well on. I don't think I'm going to pull the trigger because this is like an in-between odds range. Like, yes, he has one on the PGA Tours in an opposite field event, and it was kind of all with the putter. But the ball striking numbers, if you really drill into it, it's been really good for a while. So Gotterup, I think, is really like settling into the PGA Tour. Will win again. I don't love the putter, and I think putting skill is important here. So that's why I cooled off of him, but I think he'll play well. Ben On is possibly the only guy I'll bet on this page. I think his form's been really good. Again, I'm looking for extremes, either hit every fairway or bomb it past everybody. And he does the latter. He was in the mix in Canada. He looked better than Wyndham Clark slightly at the Travelers. I think you can bring that exact same game plan from the Travelers to here. So if you played well last week, I like just riding that hot hand, parlaying it into this week. So yeah, two top 15s over the last 3 weeks. I think that's where I see myself going. I think that's really good value for a player of his caliber.
So the second bet that I've taken beyond Cameron Young at 30-1 was a 45-1 Minwoo Lee. Just bombs away play. You kind of concerned me a little bit when you started off when saying that like course history doesn't matter here, but I think more so than course history is I think he's kind of the antithesis of what we were talking about with Ben Griffin earlier, where Ben Griffin has really excelled on courses with a high missed fairway penalty that will essentially eliminate those guys who are not accurate enough and can't gain strokes off the tee on courses of that nature. Minwoo Lee is sort of the opposite. On courses with a high miss fairway penalty, he implodes. On courses with a very low miss fairway penalty, much like the course that he won at, much like the Truist, kind of like Augusta National, kind of like Houston, courses where you're able to kind of send it without having to worry about a 15-yard right miss and being able to get away with that are the courses where he's had the most success. Even PGA National to a degree, really good around the green, 9th in the field on courses with easy scoring conditions. Sister just won. Was that her 3rd major?
Yeah.
Yeah, good for her. So maybe the Lee family is running hot this week. This was like kind of I remember last year, T2. I think he had a wedge on 18 that he thought he stuffed tight and he like overcooked it long and was the reason that he lost this tournament last year. I like him coming back here. I think 45-1 is a decent price. And at that point, it's the only guy right now out of these guys pictured here on the board that I have.
Yeah.
Let's go to page number 4. We got some long shots here. Nikolai Hogard, Jake Knapp at 75-1, including Jacob Bridgman. 80-1, you get Max Homa. Michael Thorbjornsen is back. Chris Kirk, Tom Kim. Perez is 85-1. Davis Riley, 90. Hisatsune, 90-1. Two-time champion Cam Davis is 90-1. Rico Hoey, Jesper Svensson, then Rogers and Echevarria, a couple of guys at 100. There are tons of guys in the triple digits that I think could warrant a potential long shot bomb this week. Give me a couple deep ones that you like and think have a good chance at the Rocket Classic, John.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a few bombs on the card this week. Just not super intimidated by the top of the board. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it here. So I think you look for guys who have elite strengths in one specific area. I thought about Jake Knapp. I didn't pull the trigger, but I think he makes sense here. Another guy, if you like Min-Woo Lee, you probably like him too. Plays the longer course as well. Just, sort of streaky player, but you just look at that golf swing and you're like, okay, he's going to figure it out. I didn't quite get there, but I do think that's a good number on him. Rico Hoey is one that I bet here again. If you like Min-Woo, another guy who was in the mix, taking that same like bomb and gouge approach last year. He finished T6 here. And the course history thing, like it's not to say if you play well, you will never play well again. It's more to say like you can play well in your debut because there's not like a mastery of this course that needs to happen. So
right.
I do think the guys who played well last year can follow it up as long as it wasn't like all putting or anything. I think the other thing that's interesting with Rico Hoey, he finished T6 here. He had like 6 straight missed cuts leading up to this event. And then he really took off for the second half of the year after this event. So I don't know if there's something about this course he loves that he figured it out on this course, or if it's just this time of year and he likes playing in the summer. Who knows? But it was almost like just throw out anything that happened in the first half of the year and ride Rico Hoey once it hits summertime. So we'll give that narrative a spin. I bet a few other guys that are beyond 100-1, but just to rattle off, Lee Hodges won the 3M Open. Ball striking looks good. Good comp course. Like him. Ricky Castillo, good young player. He's like 22 years old. Spikes on approach. He's one of these guys. I'm looking through his like stats, and he'll gain in like 3 out of 4 strokes gain categories every week, but it's a different 3 out of the 4. I actually really like that because that shows me that he's capable of gaining throughout the bag, and he just hasn't quite pieced it all together in one week. So when I'm looking at a long shot, I like guys who are like that, who I know they have it in them. And if the strength of his game is approach, that's always going to play on a course like this. And Antoine Rosner is the last guy. Won a few times on the DP World Tour. I got him at 150-1. One of the better iron players, really spiking on all the approach categories for me. When I ran my model, streaky with the putter, hits it a long way. So I ended up kind of favoring the longer hitters. I think when push comes to shove, a little extra distance is usually pretty advantageous.
Yes. Okay. So I'll rip off a couple of mine that I have. I took Chris Kirk, was 75-1 when I took him. He's played this event 5 times: 21st, 12th, 17th, 14th, and 44th. 8th in strokes gained total at Detroit Golf Club. 12th inside of 150 yards. So a good wedge player. Obviously, the strength of his game has always been the ability to be awesome at chipping around the greens. And I mentioned you're not going to have to scramble. If you're scrambling too much here, you likely don't have a chance, but it's certainly a nice asset to have. 12th at the U.S. Open in his last start may give him a little bit of a boost here. He's just been in contention so many times here over the weekends that I'm going to roll with him and kind of give him a shot. 80-1, I took Michael Thorbjornsen. A player that I was taking before he got injured. I saw today a tweet by our fellow BetSperts guy, Ron Close, who was there and is always there and active in the practice rounds at Detroit Golf Club. Said he spoke to Michael, said the wrist is feeling great after he had to withdraw at his last tournament at Colonial. He's now got Morikawa's old caddy, JJ Djokovic, on the bag this week. It's just bad timing for him to get hurt because I thought he was playing the best of his career at the time. He was 4th in strokes gained off the tee. I've still got him top 5 in distance in the field. I've got him 7th in par 5 scoring. A guy that just accelerates on courses that allow you to keep the driver in your hand often. And I think that's the strategy that someone like him should definitely deploy around Detroit Golf Club. And then tweeted this out this morning, 151 on my boy Carl Phillips. Young bomber, similar to Thorbjornsen, guy who can easily tap into 180 plus ball speed. The approach play has been pretty solid for Phillips as well. The numbers are a bit skewed, I think, and I think he's actually playing better than a lot of the strokes gain data will appear. So T11 at the Charles Schwab a few weeks ago was one of his better starts. And you just have to take into account that the 2 best starts of his career were at tournaments that did not have shot link data, including his win 3 months ago at Puerto Rico, where he was 26 under par. So you throw some of that data in there and in those 2 big tournaments that he had, and you would probably feel much better about the prospects of a long shot in someone like Carl Phillips. We had someone ask about Joe Highsmith in the chat, M. Patton. I did not have him on my radar. I don't know about you, John. Some of the recent form, I mean, I know he was inside the top 40 at Travelers, but 3 consecutive missed cuts, a 57th here last year. His wedge play has kind of been atrocious, which is one of the big things I'm looking. Inside of 160 yards, he's 141st in the field this week. I just don't think that he's got a lot to overcome given the recent form and some of the data points that I'm looking to warrant a bomb. Any thought on a guy like Highsmith who's won an event this year?
Yeah, I think long term he's a good player, young guy, and just good approach player, which is always a sign of good stability.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like he's kind of lost it right now and trying to get it back. So there's a lot of long shots that I like, but there's like you got to show me some form or being elite in a couple of the categories that really matter here.
That's right. Give me something. Hopefully you got something from this show this week. As always, a share with a friend is the best way to absolutely support the show. There is a link in the description on this audio podcast and YouTube video if you would like to buy a Preferred Lines t-shirt to support the show. Thank you to our sponsors, BetSperts and Rotoballer PGA. As always, John, was so pumped for you to get that winner, especially when as much as you had on stake and kind of touting one guy more than the rest for the week, and Keegan was able to come through for you. Congrats. What do you say? We're going to do it again this week?
Yeah, well, I have to say, One and Done has been quite the comeback for me. I was dead early. I missed out on all the Scotty and Rory moments early on, and then I picked the right spot for Scotty. I got a nice
at Memorial, right?
Yep.
Called
we
that
got another.
one.
This is my 3rd signature event win in One and Done. I had Ludwig at Genesis, and then Scotty at Memorial, and Keegan now here. So that racks up the money One and Done pretty quickly. I'm in the top 50 in Mayo's One and Done with like 4,000 people in it. So we're in a good position. I'm rolling with Ben Griffin this week. I have to do the same thing. If my spotlight hit last week, I got to run him back with my spotlight again. So we're hitching the wagon to Ben Griffin for better or worse in Detroit. And yeah, the last thing I'll say is I know that Chad had the house bet, which is, and that's like a staple of Preferred Lines. Yeah. What I'm going to try to do is establish a new tradition, which is the shed I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but it centers around the shed. Essentially, every time I hit an outright, I'm going to put $1,000 into my shed, and I want to open it up to either the chat or a poll on Twitter the next day or before this. We'll figure out how we put it all together. But I want to ask the people how I should upgrade the shed next, because I'm basically only going to put as much into the shed as I can win on the golf outright. So if anybody has any ideas, think big. We've got a decent budget here. The last thing I put in when Victor Hovland won the Valspar, I painted the shed a nice Valspar blue. So I don't know if there's something thematic that we can do about Travelers. Maybe a new roof for the Travelers umbrella. I don't know yet, but we'll let the people decide what goes next. But I'm excited to keep building into that shed, and hopefully that thing is looking nicer as the year goes on.
I love it, dude. Congratulations. We need some content from the shed. We need at least some pictures so the people know what exactly the improvements are needed. So we need a couple different angle shots. If you have any suggestions for John, drop them in the chat, send him a DM, send him a message on X as always. John, appreciate you. Hopefully you hit another winner and we keep bumping that shed up. Maybe we'll have to get me a flight up there. We'll play a little round. If the shed gets too nice, I might just pop in one of these days. Thank you all for checking out the show. As always, give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel on the way out if you don't mind, and you would be so kind. This has been another episode of the Preferred Lines podcast. On behalf of John Haslbauer, my name is Joe Idoni. We will catch you next week. Good luck. Let's get another winner on the show. Peace, gang.